and what that we need to consider when we choose a box with the unit. So if it's going to be mostly for frozen application, usually the safety of coefficient is taken as 1.75, and it is moved up to about 4 times when it becomes a fresh product because of the sensitivity of the product itself. What's the transporter's role? So the transporter is responsible of his link in the cold chain. So whatever happens during the transportation, he's going to be responsible for that. What we basically miss here in this region is the classification. So here currently, if I'm not mistaken, the local legislations don't specify anything particular to the transport refrigeration. So people make their own choices. Sometimes people say it works, many times people say they won't work. Probably there's been some kind of compromise which has happened. So basically when the product is coming out, the combination of the box and the unit, they will have to fall into one of the 3 classes based on what is the temperature to which the unit and the box in combination, taking into consideration the factor of safety. Does it fall between 12 to 0 degrees, which is classified as A? Then you have the 12 to -10, which is class B, and class C, which is 12 to -20 degrees centigrade. So basically here what happens is, if you look at most of the European trucks, they have certain alphanumeric numbers registered, put them on every corner of the box, which basically says what is the classification, when was it tested, and when it was due for the next test. Here, a Class C certified truck can carry any product basically from plus 12 to -20. Whereas if you go into Class B and you want to carry a frozen product, it's no good. So that's the basic rule number 1, that the transport refrigeration equipment is purely designed to maintain the temperature, like what we saw yesterday in the supermarket when we took a small tour. We're purely talking about those display cases supposed to maintain the temperature, so which means that the product which is getting loaded has to get loaded at the right temperature. What the novel issues what we face, suppose this is yesterday, many over-enthusiastic sales managers want to actually stack the whole truck with the produce, which means that it results in a lot of poor air circulation, effectively spoiling his own product. So what's that from the transportation perspective that we're working into a lot of the end users? We need to pre-cool the box. Which means that if you need to carry a frozen product at say -18 or -20 degrees, you first pre-cool the empty box to -18 or -20, whatever is the temperature you need, and then start loading the product. Which are the main sources of heat from the external point of view? It's the sunlight, and you have the door openings, and we have a very hostile climate here with about 50 to 55 degrees during summer. So it's not probably a great thing to be in, but we have to ensure that in those conditions we probably minimize the number of door openings or the period of door openings. The product has to be loaded at the right temperature. It should be packaged well as well. Air distribution is going to be the key. We advise most of our customers not to wrap certain fresh products because there's also some kind of perspiration. So it does not basically reach the final product to ensure that the product temperature is maintained. The airflow, like anything as we spoke about the cold stores, ensure that the evaporators are not obstructed. Maybe the advantage in a cold store is it's probably the evaporators are at a much higher level than the limited space you have in a truck or a trailer. make sure that there's sufficient gaps on either sides to ensure that there's a good airflow within the truck. We always recommend, because of the high humidity in the air, we always recommend a manual defrost to be initiated once the loading part of it is completed. And as we had somebody speak about yesterday, we always recommend to use a door switch for all the applications, so which means that when your doors are open, your evaporator stops blowing. So basically what happens is when you have a lot of throw coming in from the evaporator and you leave the door open, the air is going to escape out and that's going to get replaced by hot air, and which means that that's going to basically be increasing the product temperature. Okay, this is, we still have people using the other side of the wooden pallets. Many of them are closed on one side. So when we deload our trucks, we need to ensure that the openings are all in one direction so that there is proper airflow. This is a small illustration of what we can do to improve the airflow on the side of the trucks. The bodybuilding capabilities have reached new heights than what it used to be earlier. So we have a lot of spaces which can be provided inbuilt into the truck to ensure that your product doesn't kiss the walls of the truck and ensure that there's sufficient airflow. The one on the top is the most over-enthusiastic sales manager who wants to actually stack his truck fully, which probably gives you a negative result. Basically, there's a short cycling happening, and actually the rest of the product is going to turn warm. So we always recommend that you maintain a minimum of about 9 inches from the roof to ensure that there's sufficient airflow. And it's also a good practice that many companies also mark on the sides, inside walls of the trucks, on the maximum loading height. So if somebody who doesn't know at least looks at these and is able to ensure that they don't stack beyond that. Why should we cool something that's not required? So it's always better to separate the products to be cooled over the products which don't require any kind of cooling. Energy saving. We always recommend for the trucks and trailers to use the curtains, plastic curtains. So every time you open the door, at least the plastic curtains prevent the cold air from going out and getting replaced by the hot air. There's a touch beyond the transportation industry, which has been discussed on personal hygiene, which is again a key. I'm not going into the details because it's already been discussed. It's just another chart of various temperature, which is again shown by somebody earlier. So the conclusion is that this is one of the most important link and the weakest link in the cold chain. So we need to ensure that we have good practices in place, following the ADP standards, or if any other standards even well beyond what is the minimum stipulation, respecting good hygiene practices and good loading practices. I just thought I would use this also, take this opportunity to also introduce certain concepts which are going around the world, which is still at its premature or stage in this part of the region, which is talking about multi-temperature units. So this is a concept which has been in for quite a while, very popular in Europe, and it's yet to catch on in this part of the world. So this is why you need to send 2 trucks when you have incompatible products or products with different temperature. So you don't need to send one truck carrying fish, another truck carrying meat, and probably the third truck carrying some fresh products. So this is the technology which is coming in today. So you can have more than one compartment with different evaporators to to maintain the precise temperature whatever is required. So the advantage lies in fuel trucks, and today from the logistics point of view, today fuel is getting more expensive. Drivers now in the worst of the traffic jams. So it's going to actually take away a lot of your productive time. The flexibility. So your content, your requirement is going to be the limitation of the bodybuilding. So whatever is the kind of application you have and whatever is your specific requirements, the bodybuilding is quite advanced today and they can cater to your specific requirements. And of course, better planning leads to better utilization. So you can manage your entire transportation with a single truck. There's a lot of saving on fuel, emission, and of course, less noise pollution. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, we have any question? Yeah.
There we go.
Yes, hello, Oscar from Danfoss. I have a question related to alarm monitoring in the truck. So what happens if you have a problem with the unit?
Yeah.
You have a high temp alarm.
Okay.
Is there any software or, I mean, is this something that there is something that the customer can follow, can remotely have the temperature that you have in the truck?
Yeah, it's possible. Okay, number one, there is an inbuilt alarm system which can be immediately monitored by the driver of the truck. And second is you can also do a real-time monitoring. So we do have certain tracking equipments which are connected to the unit, and you can monitor the temperature, you can monitor all the alarms and certain conditions of the unit itself. So if you need to record if you need to even monitor the temperature, or if you have an alarm which has come up because of some malfunction, that can be immediately recorded.
Yeah, following this question, the retailer
Yeah.
is asking to the company
Yeah.
to have this kind of logs.
Okay, that's something which I didn't actually touch upon. That is on the temperature, the delivery tickets. Am I correct? Is that what you're asking for? Yes, there are equipments. Currently, it is not mandatory in this part of the world. Can I know that in Europe it is mandatory, and here still the responsibility of the transportation is still not being put 100% on the transporter. So there is a big difference in the legislation between what we have in Europe and what's still existing today. So we have an issue where people don't ask for delivery tickets. That's why we had a mention yesterday where people when a transport or when somebody comes in for a delivery in a supermarket like Apple or Lidl, they just check whether it has maintained the temperature at the point of receiving the goods. But there is absolutely no check on the traceability. That's perfectly right.
Okay, thank you.
Another one. Yes, behind you, please.
Muhammad Idris from the Danish. I'm asking about the multi-temperature unit, which you mentioned here. Can you tell us how we can control the temperature in different parts of the vehicle if we are putting some partition, like those partition?
Okay.
So what is the best mean or technique to control the temperature? For example, if you want it in the first chamber is like -20 and the second part is as chiller.
Yeah.
What is the best technique which based on scientific method?
Yeah. Okay. So I need to go a little into what is prevailing here generally in the market. We saw the following this, our competitors who are very much here, Tamakin was also into the same segment. We are selling multi-temperature products, but the market acceptance even today is fairly low because there is a cost factor involved because you're having 2 operators and certain additional systems in place to actually get that operated. Now, what's currently happening here in the market is people use a partition with a fan, with a thermostatic fan. So basically you pull out the air from the frozen compartment into the chilled compartment. That's what is currently happening. So in terms of ASAP, I don't think it is acceptable at all. So here what we can have is actually 2 separate compartments, totally independent of each other, and they have 2 separate operators. You basically manage the whole thing with one condensing unit, which is managed by the processor and the electronic logics. But in terms of achieving the temperature, you have 2 separate operators, and physically both the compartments are totally separate.
Because in the municipality here, we saw so many manufacturers they are making freezer in the first unit, and the second unit they will consider as chiller, but there is only exhaust or fan. And when you open the car from the right side, then the temperature will increase very fast.
Yes.
And you cannot reduce it very fast also, but because the fan is working in the same acceleration, same system. No? There is no any technique to increase the efficiency to put it down. No? So we consider the backside like dry unit or ambient temperature like this. No? We are not considered as chilled unit because we did not find it still now. Company did not tell us or give us a scientific technique to use the second part as a chiller. You get my point?
No. See, as I told you, there are 2 independent evaporators, which means that, okay, now let's imagine
If you are using 2 units, okay, huh? We are saying so.
No, this is not acceptable. Yeah, the fan is not acceptable from the HACCP point of view. If you ask me, I don't, I'm being an inspector in the Dubai municipality, I'm sure you know that better. But when it comes to this system here, we are talking about equivalent of 2 separate units. Totally independent compartments. The evaporators are designed to have sufficient airflow internally to ensure that the temperature is being maintained, and during every door opening, the airflow is sufficient to pull it back to the required temperature at the earliest. Yes, Jay.
My name is Joel from Turkey. I would agree with Mr. Krishnan what he just said now, just to elaborate on that. When we have a multi-fan unit, there is also separate temperature controls for each cabinet. So your temperature is controlled independently through the sensors. So we have plus temperatures, make plus 5 degrees chill temperature one side and frozen minus 20 the other side. So they're independently controlled. So that meets the requirement, I suppose, of the municipality. Thank you.
I think
we want to give the chance away. Last questions.
Okay, since we are talking about food safety, let's talk about water safety. You know, now in Dubai, Emirates, the Gulf, water is transported through some uninsulated vehicles, and sometimes it's exposed to the sun, or once the side door is open, it is exposed to the sun, and the summer the temperature reaches around 50 degrees C, or even more. Even inside this box, the temperature might be more. And considering that plastic bottles, okay, with this sun exposure. Have you received any calls from customers that they have been told or asked by the municipality that they should cool that compartment or that box to transport the water to the customers? Because usually, if you look with actually with a big bottles or a kind of water we are having from different water suppliers, you just look at the color of these bottles and you start to worry because it has been exposed to sun and heat. Have you got any, and my question also to the municipality, is there any new regulations, because we heard that there will be such action for transporting water. Is there any?
So maybe I can add to that, as the Dubai municipality has introduced certain regulations saying that all the food products should be transported at less than 25 degrees. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mohammed.
First of all, for the point, let me tell something here. For the point which he made here, he's saying they are making two sensors, but we are not speaking about the indicator or sensor. We're speaking about technique which can control the temperature in the second part.
It is possible. Whatever temperature you want to life for them is possible.
You only, no, let me make it very clear. When I say the municipality, only if you have 2 units, we can consider the second part as killer. But some companies that are using it by exhaust only or fan. That's why I'm making it clear. The second thing for the water bottle, see, in the municipality we are saying only we need batteries cover. This is you can use it to transfer water bottles. Maybe it can affect the quality, but it will not affect the safety of the water in the normal weather, you know. In Abu Dhabi maybe they are asking AC, but here we are asking normal temperature. Only you have to cover it just to reduce, you know, the direct heat like that, direct temperature.
See, there's an obvious cost increase to such kind of situation. You can imagine the water prices going up if you are going in a different way. If you look at the contact time of all these 5 bottles, you may not use it like for a month, or it doesn't stay in the shelf for a long time, like smaller bottles, where the plastic to water contact time is much more higher. Here, you're talking about a cycle of probably less than a month. And that's a maximum that you do. I think most houses use it because of the heat stand, and they get it in the bottle. So the contact of the plastic to water is much lesser, and that really doesn't affect the safety of the water. And quality is a different issue. As Mohammed was talking about, if there is plastic smell, I think obviously people are going to reject it. They will not buy the product. So that's up to the company to make sure that quality standards are. Thank you. Last question.
This is more of a comment rather than a question regarding the quality of water. The bottled water business is one of the biggest scams in the history of mankind. I mean, it is cheaper to actually put in a filter in your house and you get better quality water than you get bottled water. However, coming back, I think the entire supply chain needs to be addressed. There is no point in getting water transported in an insulated or whatever way in a truck and then just kept outside in the grocery shop. So you're getting the water at 17, 18, if that's what you like, but he just keeps it outside the grocery shop in 45 degrees. So if there are regulations, it has to go from the top of the product. That's all. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We invite Mr. Richard from BIT, please.
Good morning, everybody. I don't know how many, what the split is here between hygiene officers and people more interested on the technical side of refrigeration. Could I just have a show of hands? How many hygiene people have we got here? Dubai municipality, you're hygiene if you don't know, you're not refrigeration technicians. Okay. Right, thanks. So, mainly, so I've got to think, what is it that is going to make you listen to me? Because I've noticed one or two refrigerator people, when there's been hygiene talked about, perhaps doing a crossword or something. So I thought, look, refrigerator. What sells refrigerators? Food safety. Yeah? Food safety and quality sells refrigerators. If you can convince people that the higher the standard of food safety, the more refrigerators they need, then that's good for your business. Okay? Now the other thing is, the person that is going to be very instrumental in purchasing refrigerators is the person in charge. He may not have the sole responsibility, but he is going to have some responsibility. So you need to know, all you sales guys out there for the refrigeration companies, you need to know a little about the person in charge. So that's the relevance to yourselves. Right. The company. I did this last night, so it was, apologise if there's any mistakes in this, but I didn't know I was going to do this till yesterday, so we'll see how it goes. But the company, Highfield, started in operation in '82, and HABC, which is the awarding body, started in operation 2 years ago. The company is the leading awarding body for food safety, PIC, and compliance training. That means things like health and safety, food safety, first aid, security, in the UK and the UAE combined. Training qualifications and training materials, so we combine the two. So, the company, as I said, is in the UK. We have approximately, HABC, something like 1,500 centres registered with us, maybe 3,000 trainers. And offices, we just opened an office in Dubai, was in Knowledge Village, we've just moved to Healthcare City. Now, I've taken one or two slides. I feel a bit of an imposter here because I've always sat and listened to Bobby talk about PIC. Bobby Christian was in the audience. I didn't know he was going to be here when I prepared this paper. And he, if you like, PIC is, for Dubai, is his brainchild. He was the one that thought about it and brought it up passionately and convinced Dubai municipality, his colleagues and people like me how important it could be. So I've got one or two of these slides. Fortunately, I haven't got many of them. Most of them are my own. But this is one slide he took. And he said, if you go onto Google and put in food poisoning Dubai, then one of the things that comes up right at the top is the 2 children that died from food poisoning in 2009. Now, that is still an ongoing saga. I'm not going to get involved with the saga, but the fact is it's there on Google under food poisoning. And that was the reason, that was the catalyst, if you like, for Bobby and the department to say, what can we do to improve food safety in Dubai to prevent this kind of thing happening in the future, and also to protect tourism, because as everybody knows, the economy of Dubai is based on, to a large extent, tourism. Those 2 factors. So Bobby did lots of research, looked around the world to see what he could find as different projects to improve food safety. We've seen initiatives, most initiatives throughout the world have been involving training, purely in isolation, whether it be training of all the food handlers, mandatory, as in Abu Dhabi, and to some extent maybe Sharjah, or training of management, which is much less common, but much more involved. And it came across in Florida that they required, in this particular state, a certified manager, that every establishment, every food establishment had to have a certified manager. Also, that applied in Australia as well. That in the state of Queensland, having a well-trained and accredited food safety supervisor in each kitchen will give a huge boost to consumer confidence, which in turn can only benefit the food business themselves. So, that was the starting point to think, can we introduce something similar? Or more importantly, can we improve on it? Can we make it better? Can we make a safer, better system to improve food safety? And we have an administrative order, at least I think, I'm from outside of but I think we've got one because I've been hearing about the administrative order for at least a year. I've seen a copy in English and I've seen some of it written in Arabic as well. And I keep being told that it's imminent. Perhaps a month, perhaps 2 months, but you've got to remember that's Dubai time. You know, those of you that have been in Dubai longer than I will know that Dubai time is like elastic. You know, when you say you're going for a meeting at 9 o'clock, people turn up at 10 o'clock and things like that. So you've got to get used to it, it's much longer. But the administrative order will come into operation, and I'm sure that Dubai municipality inspectors here will correct me if that's not the case. It will come in, and it's going to require food establishments to employ at least one full-time on-site person in charge, certified in food safety and responsible for all operations that have an impact on food safety. That does not mean to say that the food business operator can say, over to you, if there's a problem, you're going to carry the can. The food business operator will still be responsible because the person in charge can only do so much. They'll need resources, they'll need support. So it's a combination. Both of them are going to be in trouble if there's a problem. However, quite often the food business operator doesn't know much about food safety. That was the problem. They're the ones with the purse strings, but they're not really controlling food safety because they don't often know a great deal about food safety. They've got other things to think about. So this was the idea. It's a team, if you like, and both of them are going to be responsible. But the person in charge is going to be the one that liaises with the municipality. Also, the person in charge is going to be the one that if you've got a problem, if you've got a complaint as a member of the public, you go into the food premises, you can ask for the person in charge. Okay? So at last, not everybody says, it's nothing to do with me, I don't know, and so on, and can't help you. The person in charge is going to be responsible as well. So the public have got somebody to focus on. Now, I have been involved with food safety for 40 years, at least, professionally. Dubai PIG, the actual program, is in my view a world-leading food safety initiative, if not one of the best that I've seen, certainly. We've looked at it in other countries, we've seen it in America and Australia, and Bobby, when he spoke to me, was looking to see how we can add value, how we can make the Dubai program better than the other ones, so we get better return, higher standards of safety. So there's some things that we've done, some are replicated in other schemes, some are, as far as I'm aware, unique. Firstly, it's a mandatory legal requirement. Research will tell you that if you require something to be done, such as a training program, if you make it voluntary, it won't be anywhere near as effective. There is, however, the other problem that people tend just to comply with the scheme because it's a legal requirement and they're not really interested in the implementation. So if you bring in a scheme, it's not just about mandatory, let's have a qualification on the wall, because that equally will not be as successful, and that is unfortunately what happens quite often. So, however, you make it mandatory. The next thing you do, which again, this is fairly unique, certainly in anything I've been involved with, you look at all the stakeholders and you don't impose the system from Dubai municipality, you design the system and then you put it to open consultation and you have the inspectors and the trainers and members of the food industry, particularly the internal trainers, who can look at the programme, decide whether or not the training material is satisfactory, if it's effective for Dubai, if they understand it, if it can be improved. And we did that over, probably we started in June or earlier last year, and over a period of months we developed the material and then sat through several pilot courses with potential PIC trainers, food inspectors, and everybody was commenting, and the material was changed as a result. Something I was very keen on, to me, was that schemes that have been set up in different parts of the Middle East are not accepted in other parts of the world. Whereas if you have let's say, a ServSafe qualification, or a UK intermediate qualification, or from an awarding body, then it will be accepted in different parts of the world. You can go to the UK, it will be accepted there. You can go to different, as I said, different countries, and they will accept it. So we wanted to have a benchmark, so it was benchmarked against the internationally recognised qualifications from the UK at level 2, which is a 6-hour course, generally for high-risk food handlers, and level 3 for supervisors. That's the level. Although, remember, PIC in Dubai is aimed at managers, totally managers. However, you have to recognise, as they found out in Abu Dhabi, if you make something compulsory and say everybody's got to have the exam, then you can get a very high failure rate if you don't take account of the academic ability of everybody involved. So, we linked it to international recognised qualifications. That was a first, as far as I'm aware, for a scheme like this. A recognition of the different levels, different academic levels, different ability of people, different languages, and the risk associated. So, the higher the risk, then you go to level 3, lower risk, level 2. We wanted to provide responsibility and accountability, which is often missing. The system before is generally inspectors go into a premises, they find some problems, they find the owner pays the fine, and then you wait till the next time. If it's really bad, you can close the premises down. But you have a cycle where quite often the owner doesn't know what the fine's for, he just pays. Here, we're giving the responsibility and the accountability to a particular person, and they have to be trained in food safety so they know exactly what's going on. Now, one of the key features of the programme is also that the person in charge will be required to undertake internal audits, so that's like a self-inspection. So instead of relying on the inspector coming around and telling you what is wrong, it is expected that the person in charge will have already done an audit, which the inspector will be asking for, and this should be done probably once a month, and there should be a list of audits. The inspector will ask for the file with all the audits in to make sure they've been done. Now, that's very interesting because if the inspector finds lots of problems that haven't been picked up by the person in charge, it indicates that the person in charge isn't doing the job very properly. Or, if they've all been identified and sent to the owner, and the owner's done nothing about it, then you know where the blame lies. So you know whether it's a PIC problem or whether it's an owner problem, based on the audits. And the idea is that people in effect self-regulating themselves, which is a much better system than just relying on the inspector to improve standards every time they visit. So, the other thing is that we have a problem quite often that the people doing the training, and there are probably, I don't know, 50 training organisations and probably 50 internal trainers that are working for the large organisations in Dubai, saying one thing. The food business can be saying something else, the policies and so on from the food business, and then the inspectors can be saying something else. So you're getting mixed messages. It's always a problem when you get regulation, you get experts and you get trainers. And quite often people give mixed messages, and the people in the food industry don't know what they should be doing. The scheme involves the inspectors, so the inspectors had to sit on the same course as the trainers, and they participated in developing the material. So everybody was involved, everybody participated. Ongoing inspectors will be kept involved. They can attend the next thing, which is the Food Safety Trainers Forum, which is all the PIC trainers will come together periodically to meetings where the municipality will be giving them an update on what's happening and let them have an opportunity to feedback to say if things aren't working, what's going wrong, what's going right, and how we can continually improve the programme. And another thing, and this is very brave in my view, and again hasn't happened anywhere else, whether you look at Sharjah or Abu Dhabi or anywhere else, and that is totally independent evaluation of the programme by North Carolina University and by a person there, Shepherd, what's his first? Sorry? Ben Shepherd, who is going to be using PhD students to come across to evaluate. Now, that is unique because quite often the schemes that I've seen are evaluated by the persons responsible for the scheme, who've got obviously a vested interest in making sure if it's wrong, it's somebody else that's at fault. So in this case, either myself, the trainers, the food industry, the inspectors, any of us could be found to either be responsible for the success of the scheme or perhaps a need for improvement and which of us need to improve. So again, that's a very important step and one that I personally welcome because Ben Shepherd has had nothing whatsoever to do with the scheme. Other experts, by the way, have been involved, and I should also say that people like Bashir from Dubai Municipality, as well as Bobby, Khalid has obviously given the go-ahead as the head of the department. People like Pete Snyder from America have been consulted, who's a world-renowned food safety expert, Chris Griffith. So lots of people have been involved in actually looking at the scheme. Our role as an awarding body, under the direction and guidance of Dubai Municipality, the first thing was, it was decided that we would have certification bodies running the scheme as opposed to awarding bodies. Awarding bodies from the UK are off-call organisations, so it was decided that those people that wanted to be involved with the examination and providing the material had to be certified through the Dubai Accreditation Centre and 17,024. So basically that's what's happened. At the moment there are two certification bodies, ourselves and one other, and there will be another one in the future, so possibly there'll be three. The only one at the moment that's off-qual accredited is ourselves. That means we can give international qualifications as well as the PIC. My responsibility was to work very closely with Bobby to develop the course content and link it to the international standards, which we did throughout last year. We then published the PIC handbook, which you've seen, which is endorsed by Dubai Municipality, and everybody sitting on the courses, all the PICs have to have that book, which gives them the important hygiene and safety rules relating to the premises. So that's, everybody gets one of those. We then had to be involved in training the PIC trainers. As an awarding body, we can't deliver the PIC ourselves, but we are registered through that to deliver the PIC training to the PIC trainers. So it's like training the trainers. And we've done that probably about 120 people, I think, including trainers and DM inspectors who sat through the course, which is probably, I don't know, 90%, 95% of the total people who have been trained have been done through HABC. The next thing was to look at developing translations, and what's going to happen is, originally it wasn't all going to be translated, but now we're looking for the examination papers at level 3 to be translated into Arabic and Malayalam, which will be available shortly. And at level 2, we're looking, in addition to Malayalam and Arabic, we're also looking at Hindi, Bengali as well. So, and if there's a demand, a significant demand in other languages, then we look at that. In addition, the PIC handbook is going to be translated by the municipality into Malayalam and Arabic. Continuing with the role is, we are responsible as awarding bodies for providing the examinations, marking the examinations, and issuing the certificates. In addition, we invigilate as well. So that is another big thing. This was a requirement through DAC, that the awarding bodies are responsible for completely independent invigilation. So we know that the people who sit the exams, if they pass the exams, is genuine, they've passed the exams. I won't say more than that, but I do know in other areas where things are different. We also have to audit a percentage of the courses to make sure that the trainers are doing their job effectively. That is also a requirement imposed on the awarding bodies, quite rightly, by the municipality. And the municipality inspectors themselves will also be auditing the courses. We have to register all the persons in charge, and we have a major register. Probably at the moment, I don't know, maybe somewhere over 1,000 persons in charge have already been qualified, and the list has been started. Probably another 15,000 or so to go. We participate in the trainers forum to take feedback, because, as I've said all the time, it's important that all the stakeholders are continuously involved, the awarding bodies as well as the trainers and the food industry and the inspectors. We organise CPD events, that's continuing professional development. Now, what has happened is, Dubai Municipality said that all the trainers have to continuously improve themselves, and therefore all of them have to sit 30 hours of CPD events. So actually coming here, this would qualify as a CPD event. Okay, so if you're here for 6 hours, then you've got 6 CPD hours. And this happens in quite a lot of professions. I don't know whether it happens with refrigeration engineers, but it happens with lawyers and accountants and quite a lot of consultants as well, where you have to attend regular seminars and training exercises to maintain your level of expertise and knowledge. And obviously the other thing that we are committed to is continuous improvement and updating. So, who is a PIC? So the person in charge in any food establishment is the person with overall responsibility for running that location during the entire time of the operation. So if you're operating for 16 hours, you're going to need at least 2 PICs. And that's just for, let's say, a kiosk with 3 people involved. You'll need 3 people in each shift, so you've got 6 in total. You need 2 PICs. If you're a large hotel and you've got, let's say, 10 restaurants, each running 16 hours, then each restaurant is going to need 2 PICs, so therefore you'll need 20 PICs. That's a rough idea. If you're unsure about how many PICs you need within your organisation and the level of the PIC, whether it's level 2 or level 3, you need to consult with your local inspector, who will go through the procedure with you. Yeah? So, and the PIC is going to have an active role in managing the food safety within the food establishment, so we've got to make sure we get the right person. For example, it's the chef, it's the supervisor, it's the food and beverage manager. It's not somebody just selected, you know, like, oh, you're the bottle washer, you've got nothing better to do, go home and attend the course. That will not happen and won't work. If it does, the system will work, the person wouldn't pass the exam and the inspector wouldn't authorise that person to be a suitable person in charge. So, one thing I'm keen on is, and it was a coincidence this, but something I came up with about the food safety generally, but also what is PIC about? You know, is PIC just something that is going to be imposed as an extra cost on the business? No, I honestly believe PIC will protect profit, protect image or brand, and protect the customer. So there's a payback. Not in terms of necessarily generating income, but certainly in protecting income and protecting profit. And finally, what is the responsibilities of the person in charge? How is it broken down? And Dubai came up with the phrase catches, which encompasses the areas, technical areas of food safety that the PIC is responsible for. Preventing cross-contamination, active managerial control, applying active managerial control, something obviously dear to everybody in this room, ensuring correct control of time, temperature, ensuring no abuse, cleaning and disinfection, the hygiene of personnel, and particularly with regard to the exclusion of is delivered is from an approved source. So that's a whistle-stop tour of PIC. So if there are any questions, I'll take those, and obviously I'll be outside as well.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Richard. Two questions actually, two parts. You mentioned in your discussion that suppose the PIC does an internal audit and he finds certain discrepancies. He needs the resources, say, from the owner, and he reports it to the owner. But the owner does nothing to support it. But you still say that in case there's a problem, the PIC is the one responsible. Isn't that a contradiction in terms?
No, what I've said was that the inspector in that situation would know where the responsibility lies. Because yes, the PIC is responsible, and he's responsible for pointing out the problems to the people with the purse strings. That's the only way it's going to work. Now, if he's got a record of his inspection, and he can prove that he's given that to the owner or his boss, and the boss has done nothing, then in my view, and Dubai Municipality may want to comment on that, in that case where the PIC has tried to secure the improvements and they haven't been forthcoming, then to me the responsibility would go to the owner of the business, not the person in charge.
I think I'll split it into two. One is when you have a serious problem. If you have an outbreak, if you have a serious illness, then the responsibility is decided by the court. Dubai Municipality gives this inspection report. Now the second thing is, as we're saying, if the person in charge cannot take an action because the owner is not interested, it's still the problem of the person in charge. Because for Dubai Municipality, you cannot choose between the person in charge and the owner, whereas it's an establishment. And that person has to make sure that things are all right.
But that's unfair. Anyway, this will need a little bit more discussion to find, because the PIC is under the umbrella of the owner. He gets a salary from the owner.
Right.
And in most circumstances, you'll have to document this, and in these situations, documents have a funny way of disappearing in case the culpability is with the owner. My second question is, certification. Is there a period of certification, or these people will need to be recertified because if we're bringing in more practices?
5 The pick lasts for 5 years, but before the end of the 3rd year, they have to sit a refresher. That's part of 17,024. So they'll do a 1-day training course, most likely, before the end of the 3rd year. So it'll be in between 2.5 and 3 years. No, the CPD was for the trainers, not for the picks. It's the trainers have to have the CPD.
When this establishment receives a product in the wrong condition, let's take an example of a restaurant where the input material is actually spoiled, or it's not, it has been contaminated previously before receipt, and the food is served in the restaurant, so which means that without their knowledge, it's likely that the food has been received in a contaminated state, and they are just processing or cooking and delivering it. And in that case, how does the PIC, the pick, know that he has actually received, or maybe he's made the scapegoat for somebody else's mistake?
That very much depends on the type of contamination. You can have contamination which is obvious, and you can have contamination, let's say norovirus in a shellfish, which you wouldn't be able to spot. Now, you have to have a system in place. The pick's responsibility is not to check personally himself, but he has to have a system in place. In some cases he might check, but generally he has a system in place to make sure the goods are checked and received satisfactorily. So if there's any visible evidence of deterioration or spoilage, the system should pick that up. In terms of contamination that's not visible, in that case it could be things like a can of meat with a foreign body in it, or, as I said, it could be shellfish and norovirus, something like that. In that case, you have to fall back on using approved suppliers. And if you aren't using approved suppliers, if somebody just comes out of nowhere, they've got no record, just I've got some cheap food for you, and you just take that food in, then you're going to be liable if that food's contaminated. So we're looking for approved suppliers, and there's ways that you can determine whether the supplier's approved, and also through DM. So normally, the responsibility in those situations can be determined as to whether it was received or whether it was contaminated within the premises, but at the end of the day, if that product is served to the customer, it's the restaurant or the retailer that is usually responsible. Yeah? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kamal from Just the system looks great, but practically I just have a question. Let's give an example. For example, you mentioned one of the points that the big guy he has to make sure about the temperature, time, and those details. But in fact, don't you think that it will impose more requirements on the owner indirectly? I mean, in order for the big guy to fulfill his responsibility, his job, he's going to impose on the owner extra investment or anything. Thank you.
Yeah, the situation is yes. In terms of many premises, that will be the case. In the case of 4- or 5-star hotels, they've already got these systems in place. They might not have got the pick in place, but quite often they've got somebody very similar. They've got hygiene managers. They've been asking for this kind of requirement, temperature control, etc. HACCP is all in place. So there's not going to be a significant difference for premises that already comply with the law and have the highest standards. But yes, in the smaller premises, and sometimes the smaller premises can produce a large number of meals, sometimes even more than the hotels. And they, arguably, for too long, may not, some of them, have put in the resources they needed to keep the temperatures at the right level and so on. And yes, there's got to be extra resources, and it's got to be a requirement, and the resources will be proportional to the standards. So the higher the standards that you've already got, the lower the resources that you'll be required to spend.
It's about meeting the requirement. So if you need a temperature control requirement to be met, you definitely need to spend resources. Now, when we said person in charge will be responsible, we didn't mean that that person will be held responsible. It just means that that person has to take an action to make sure that the objectives are met. That doesn't mean that they will be fined with the code, or that's not accountability in that sense. It's accountability in terms of communication. It's about having someone to deal with these things, and we will treat them as our own inspectors. So it's just a channel to reach the establishment in a faster way. At this point of time, when we go for inspection, we do not have anyone to speak to. Every time you go there, you see a different person. And if you want temperature control to be met, or if you have a problem with the supplier, we just find one of these food handlers standing there and answering the questions, where when we give the recommendation, they will not follow it. And the fines keep coming every time because there's no corrective action taken. So when that list said temperature control, it just means that that person should know what are the essentials of temperature control, and that person should also know who will be doing the temperature checks, what kind of equipment they require, and so on. It doesn't mean that that person has to go immediately and do something personally in terms of checking or analyzing things. So every control is based on